My 60th birthday was supposed to be a quiet celebration, a moment of reflection. Instead, it became a public execution orchestrated by my own son, where my entire life was dissected, ridiculed, and ultimately thrown away right in front of me. Hi everyone, my name is James, and I just turned 60. You know, I've never been one to air my dirty laundry online, but after what went down at my birthday party, well, I need to get this off my chest. Maybe you've been there, maybe you'll understand. Or maybe I just need to say it all out loud before I do something I truly regret. I'd always pictured my 60th as something simple, a nice dinner, maybe a few drinks, a heartfelt speech from one of my kids. Instead, my oldest son, Ethan, turned it into a full-blown public humiliation. And honestly, I should have seen it coming a mile away. Just a few months earlier, Ethan calls me, all sunshine and smiles, offering to plan the whole thing. That alone? Red flag number 1. We hadn't been close in years. Not since the divorce, not since my ex-wife, Linda, worked overtime to paint me as the villain to our kids. I always hoped time would heal those wounds, but it just gave them more reasons to resent me. Still, when Ethan called, a part of me, a hopeful part, wanted to believe things were finally getting better. "Dad," he said, his voice unusually warm. "You're turning 60. That's huge. Let us take care of it." And you know what? Hearing him say us, referring to my 3 sons, Ethan, Ryan, and Caleb, who'd been so distant for so long, it felt good. I missed them deeply. So, against every fiber of my being that screamed, danger, I let them handle everything. I even let Ethan book the venue. That, my friends, was my very first mistake. The party was at this ridiculously fancy event hall, the kind of place you reserve for weddings, not whatever this was. The guest list was massive, far bigger than I expected. Old friends, distant relatives, even Linda was there, beaming, looking like she owned the entire place. A cold feeling settled in my stomach when I saw her smile, but I forced it down. I really should have trusted my gut. The night started off okay, genuinely. Drinks were flowing, conversations were light, and for the first time in years, I actually felt like I belonged, like I was celebrating. Then, Ethan took the stage. "All right, everyone," he said, tapping the mic, that smirk already playing on his lips. "Tonight is all about celebrating a man who has, well, let's just say, had an interesting life." People chuckled. I plastered on a smile, thinking, okay, maybe it's just a little roast. Harmless, right? Oh, how wrong I was. So incredibly, catastrophically wrong. The lights dimmed. A projector flickered to life behind him. A video started playing. At first, I didn't get it. What was I looking at? Then, a voice began to narrate. My ex-wife's voice. Linda's voice. And the words she uttered, they pierced me. "He failed as a husband," she began. "Failed as a father and failed as a man." And then the room erupted. Laughter. Real, genuine, gut-wrenching laughter from the crowd. I sat there absolutely frozen, as photo after photo flashed across the screen. My old house. The day I moved out with nothing but a beat-up suitcase. The courtroom, where Linda, she took everything from me. There was even a grainy clip of me years ago, clearly drunk at some family reunion. The audience was devouring it, eating up every single painful, public moment. The grand finale? Ethan himself, standing in front of a courthouse. And with that, he announced, a triumphant gleam in his eye, "I'm officially changing my last name. None of us want to be associated with James Turner anymore." The room exploded. Cheering. Clapping. And then I saw it. My youngest son, Caleb, the one who used to cling to my leg as a little boy, was grinning. Grinning like this was the best night of his entire life. I just sat there, staring at that screen, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard I thought it might just give out. I could have screamed. I could have demanded an explanation, thrown a fit. But instead, I did the only thing that felt right in that moment. I stood up. I raised my glass. "Thanks for coming," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Then I walked out. That was last night. This morning, my phone hasn't stopped vibrating. Messages from family, from old friends, even from Ethan himself. Now, suddenly they're sorry. Now they want to talk. But you know what? I'm done talking. I've spent my entire life being the guy who just takes the hits and keeps on moving. But this was the last damn straw. They wanted to humiliate me? Fine. Now it was my turn. I spent the rest of that night alone in my apartment, sitting in the dark, a glass of whiskey clutched in my hand, watching my phone buzz endlessly. Messages flooded in apologies, pathetic excuses, a few half-hearted attempts to justify what they'd done. At first, I just ignored them. But as they kept coming, a realization hit me like a ton of bricks. They weren't sorry for what they did to me. They were sorry because they finally understood what they had lost. And how did they understand? Well, it all started when my lawyer, a man named Mr. Reynolds, made a few phone calls. See, what my sons never knew, what nobody in that room knew, was that I wasn't just some washed-up old man, scraping by after the divorce. Oh no. I had played the long game. When Linda took me to court all those years ago, she did get nearly everything. The house, the savings, even half of my retirement. I walked away with practically nothing. That's what everyone assumed, at least. But what they didn't realize was that losing everything, absolutely everything, forced me to start over. And I did. For the past 20 years, I had been quietly, diligently building something for myself. I started my own business. Small at first, just a consulting gig, enough to pay the bills. But I was patient. I invested smartly, made connections, expanded. Slowly, surely, my company took off. Eventually, I sold it for more money than I ever thought I'd see in my lifetime. I never flaunted my wealth. I lived in a modest apartment, drove an old truck, and let everyone believe I was still just getting by. My sons? They never even bothered to ask. They had already written me off as a failure. That is, until Mr. Reynolds called them. I had planned to leave everything to them, you know? Split evenly, no questions asked. I never really held a grudge, not truly. I figured, despite everything, they were still my sons. But after what they pulled at my birthday party? That changed absolutely everything. I called Mr. Reynolds the moment I got home, still buzzing with the humiliation, still hearing Linda's voice mocking me over the speakers. "Take them out of the will," I told him, my voice flat, calm. He didn't hesitate. "Are you sure, James?" he asked. "Absolutely," I said. "And while you're at it, let them know." And that, my friends, is why they were suddenly so sorry. By morning, they had all gotten the news. Ethan, Ryan, and Caleb, the same sons who had laughed in my face, who had publicly disowned me, were now frantically trying to reach me. The first call came from Ethan. I let it go to voicemail. Then Ryan. Then Caleb. Then Ethan again. The texts? Oh, the texts were even better. Ethan, "Dad, we need to talk. Please call me." Ryan, "I think we should clear the air. What happened at the party was just a joke." Caleb, "Dad, I didn't know about the video. I swear I didn't think it would be that bad." That last one almost made me laugh. That bad. The kid was standing right there, cheering along with the rest of them. And then came the real kicker, Linda herself. She never texted me, ever. But there it was, her name flashing across my screen. "James, the boys told me what you did. We need to talk." I just turned my phone off. And you know what? I smiled. For the first time in a very long time. Let them panic, I thought. Let them feel what it's like to be discarded, to be treated as nothing more than an afterthought. I wasn't done yet. I left my phone off for the rest of the day, just savoring the silence for once. No buzzing, no desperate calls, no fake apologies. Just peace. But by the next morning, I was greeted by something new. They were at my door. A frantic, desperate knocking jolted me awake. This wasn't some polite tap. This was the kind of pounding that screamed, "We're not leaving without answers." I already knew who it was. I took my sweet time getting up, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, savoring the quiet before I finally opened the door. And there they stood. Ethan, Ryan, and Caleb huddled in the hallway of my apartment building, looking more uncomfortable than I'd ever seen them. Ethan, always the ringleader, was the first to speak. "Dad," he started, his voice already oozing that forced warmth I'd grown to despise. "Can we talk?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the silence hang heavy in the air before I finally responded. "About what?" Ethan exchanged a quick, nervous glance with Ryan and Caleb, like they were trying to decide who would break first. Ryan, bless his heart, finally caved. "We heard from your lawyer." And I cut him off, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Ethan forced a laugh, rubbing the back of his neck like this was all just some big, goofy misunderstanding. "Look, Dad, we know you're upset about the party." I held up a hand, cutting him off again. "Upset?" I repeated, tilting my head slightly. "No, Ethan, I wasn't upset. I was humiliated. You didn't just roast me. You made a spectacle out of my worst moments. You had your mother narrate my failures like it was some kind of twisted documentary. And then, you all sat there and laughed." None of them had a single thing to say to that. Caleb, my youngest, finally spoke up, his voice quieter, almost a whisper. "Dad, I didn't know it was going to be that bad. I thought it was just..." He stopped himself, probably realizing how utterly pathetic that excuse sounded. I nodded slowly. "But you didn't know. But you still clapped, didn't you? You still laughed when Ethan announced he was dropping my last name like it was trash." Ethan winced, but he quickly recovered, trying to regain some control. "Dad, we were drinking. It was just a bad joke. Okay? We didn't mean..." "You meant every single word," I interrupted him, my voice still calm but firm. "And that's fine. You don't want to be my sons anymore? Great. Then you won't be." Ryan stepped forward then, his expression shifting from guilt to raw desperation. "Dad, please. You can't do this. We're family." I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Now we're family? That's funny. Because when you stood there and let your mother drag my name through the mud, I wasn't family then, was I? When you changed your last name, I wasn't family then. But now that you've found out you're not getting a dime, suddenly I'm Dad again." Ethan, clearly realizing their usual tactics weren't working, tried a different approach. "All right, look, maybe we went too far. We get it. We're sorry, okay? But cutting us out completely? Come on. That's extreme." I took another slow sip of my coffee, looking him dead in the eye. "Is it?" Ryan threw his hands up in exasperation. "Yes, Dad. This isn't fair. You have millions. What are we supposed to do?" And there it was. The real reason they were standing at my door. Not because they felt guilty, not because they regretted what they did. It was because they needed my money. I stepped forward, lowering my voice so it was barely a whisper. "That's not my problem." Ethan's face twisted in frustration, a vein popping in his temple. "Dad, we're your kids." "No," I said, my voice rock solid. "You made it clear at that party that I wasn't your father. You're Linda's sons. You're her boys. So, why don't you go ask her for money?" Caleb, looking absolutely panicked, tried one last desperate attempt. His voice cracked. "Dad, please. I just bought a house. I have loans. I was counting on that money." I didn't let him finish. "You should have counted on me instead." Silence. Ethan, for the first time, looked genuinely nervous, like he was finally realizing, way too late, that this wasn't some game. "All right," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "Fine. If this is how you want to be, Then don't expect us to come crawling back when you change your mind. I smiled. A real, genuine smile. But I won't. I turned and stepped back into my apartment, gripping the door handle. Ryan made one last desperate, choked-out attempt. Dad. I shut the door firmly in their faces. I stood there for a long moment, listening as they whispered to each other, trying to figure out what to do next. Eventually, their voices faded, their footsteps retreating down the hall. Only then did I exhale. For years, I let them treat me like I was nothing. I took the hits, always hoping that one day, they'd see me differently. But now I knew the truth. They never cared. Not about me, not about the sacrifices I made. They only cared about what I could give them. And now, they would get nothing. I didn't hear from them again that day, or the next. For the first time in years, my phone was blissfully silent. No fake apologies, no guilt-tripping messages. Just peace. But I knew better than to think it was truly over. And I was right. 3 days later, there was another knock at my door. Lighter this time. Hesitant. I didn't answer. Then came the texts again. Caleb, Dad, please. I don't know what to do. Can we talk? Ryan, we messed up. Okay, just give us a chance to fix this. Ethan, you're really going to throw away your own family over a stupid party? That last one made me shake my head. Ethan still didn't get it. To him, this was just a tantrum, something I'd eventually get over. But I wasn't going to. Then, a message from Linda. Of course. Her name popped up. James, we need to talk. It's about the boys. I rolled my eyes. She probably thought she could manipulate me, just like she always used to. I ignored them all. That night, I went out to dinner alone. And for once, I didn't feel the crushing weight of their expectations. I let myself enjoy a delicious steak, a fine drink, the quiet hum of a restaurant where no one looked at me like I was a failure. But when I got home, I found something that made me furious. A note slipped under my door. Dad, we're outside. Please talk to us. They were still here. I took a deep breath, my jaw tightening. They just didn't know when to quit. I walked to the window and pulled the curtain back. Sure enough, all 3 of them were standing there by the parking lot, looking utterly lost and desperate. Caleb was pacing, a nervous wreck. Ryan had his arms crossed, rubbing his temples, clearly stressed. And Ethan, always the ringleader, was leaned against his car, staring at his phone, probably drafting another guilt trip I'd never read. For a moment, I considered just ignoring them again. But no, it was time. Time to end this, once and for all. I grabbed my coat, stepped outside, and slowly made my way down the steps. The moment they saw me, Caleb's face lit up with a fragile hope. Dad, he called, already walking towards me. I held up a hand. No, we're doing this my way now. That stopped him dead in his tracks. Ethan straightened up, trying to look composed. Dad, we just want to talk. I folded my arms, my stance unyielding. Talk then. Caleb swallowed hard, looking straight at me. Look, I was wrong. We all were. We shouldn't have done that to you. I should have stood up for you, but I was scared of looking weak in front of them. He trailed off. I didn't say anything. Ryan sighed, a sound of defeat. Dad, we don't want your money. We just... Stop, I interrupted, cutting him off again. You do want my money. And that's fine. But I want you to say it. Say it out loud. Be honest for once in your lives. They hesitated, shuffling their feet. Then Ethan scoffed, his bravado returning. Fine. Yeah, we want the money, obviously. But we also want our father back. I tilted my head, a dry smile touching my lips. You want your father back? You mean the one you humiliated in front of 100 people? The one you disowned in public? That father. Ethan clenched his jaw, his eyes flashing. It was a joke, Dad. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. It was a hollow, mirthless sound. No, a joke is when everyone finds it funny. What you did? That was a funeral. My funeral. You buried me that night. And you expected me to just lie there and take it? Caleb looked like he was on the verge of tears. Dad, please. Just, what do we have to do to make this right? I let the silence stretch out, long and uncomfortable, before finally speaking. Nothing. Ryan frowned, bewildered. What? There's nothing you can do, I said simply. This isn't a test. There's no magic phrase that makes this go away. You made your choice. And I'm making mine. Caleb shook his head, his voice cracking. Dad, you can't do this. Yes, I can, I said, my voice firm, unwavering. I already have. Ethan's face darkened, a cold anger replacing his frustration. So that's it? You're just going to cut us off forever? I took a deep breath, looking at each of them. My sons. My family. And in that moment, I felt nothing. You cut me off first. Ethan threw up his hands, letting out a bitter, disbelieving laugh. Unbelievable. You finally get some money, and suddenly you're too good for us. I shook my head slowly. It was never about the money, Ethan. It was about respect. Something you never gave me. Ryan, always the calmest of the three, took a hesitant step forward. Dad, let's just take some time, okay? Maybe we can meet in a week. Just dinner. No talk about the will. I stared at him, my gaze piercing. Did you apologize to me before you knew about the money? He hesitated, then looked away. That's what I thought. Then I turned and walked away. Caleb called after me, his voice breaking. Dad, please. I don't want your money. I just don't want to lose you. I stopped in my tracks. For a brief second, I felt something. A flicker. The old instinct to forgive, to be the father they wanted. But then I remembered that night. The laughter. The humiliation. I kept walking. And I didn't look back. I walked back inside, locked the door and exhaled. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. For the first time in decades, I felt free. I had no obligations to anyone who didn't deserve my kindness. No more forced smiles. No more pretending everything was fine. I had drawn the line, and they had finally, truly seen it. But I knew they weren't done yet. The texts continued that night. Caleb was still pleading, sending long messages about how much he missed me, how he regretted everything, how he'd do anything to fix this. Ryan sent fewer texts, trying a logical approach, asking for another conversation, saying there must be a way forward. Ethan, predictably, went full rage mode, accusing me of being a selfish old man who only cared about winning. I didn't reply to a single one. Then, 2 days later, the real desperation set in. Caleb showed up at my office. I was coming back from lunch when I saw him, sitting on a bench outside the building, head down, hands clasped. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. When he saw me, he stood up so quickly he nearly tripped. Dad, please, he stammered. Just 5 minutes. I sighed. Caleb. I know you don't want to hear it, he interrupted, his voice cracking. But please, just let me say my piece. I crossed my arms. You already did at my party. In front of everyone. He flinched, guilt etched onto his face. I was a fool. We were all stupid. I should have stopped them. I should have walked away, but I didn't. And I hate myself for it. I didn't say anything. His voice dropped to a pained whisper. I swear I don't care about the money, Dad. I don't want to lose you. You're my father and I... He ran a hand through his hair, looking utterly defeated. I don't want to live with this regret. That almost got me. Almost.